Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, after 20 million deaths, World War I finally ended. It was Armistice Day. Today, the 11th day of November, honors all our veterans and mourns our losses in every war. This week, it is especially poignant as so many families are still trembling from the events at Fort Hood, Texas, last Thursday, where 12 soldiers and a civilian were murdered, 43 others wounded. That day, the news spread fast. It is the digital age. Some tweets got it wrong, saying the shooter was killed, but some videos posted on YouTube just hours after the event began to tell the story. Here, back to back, are clips from a couple of them. In the first, the camera is aimless and keeping a safe distance, but the soundtrack says a lot. The second video is a wise old veteran not far off the mark, even without the facts. He figures a soldier has cracked under the weight of 2 wars.
Attention! Seek shelter immediately. Close doors and windows. Shut off heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Seek shelter immediately.
There's a lot of stress on the military members, and this is probably a result, I'd like to believe, the result of the stress of, the different deployments and stuff like that, because the military, especially the Army, is stretched very thin. And recently the military has tried to, reduce suicides, and it's really a shame. We had that over in, Iraq there, Baghdad. The fellow went for treatment and killed 5 service members. This may be another incident of someone who needed mental health treatment. The other thing is that in the military right now, that there's still a stigma about getting mental health, seeking help, and it's a shame because some people think if they go to get treatment, it's going to hurt their career, and they're trying to erase that stigma about mental health. So it's difficult to say, but it's still a tragedy.
Early web video views from the Fort Hood shooting, even before the facts were actually known, as some of that reflects. From PatriotLedger.com, that was John Pelosi, commander of the American Legion Post in Braintree, Massachusetts on that day. Of course, not all web video news is raw footage or personal thoughts. In a moment, we'll meet a couple of rigorous filmmakers on whom the New York Times relies for some of its web videos. And later on tonight's program, we'll learn how in the developing world the cell phone might be what the printing press was to Europe 600 years ago, a revolution. And lastly, we'll encounter a computer-generated Manhattan as it looked centuries before the skyline.
This is the view looking down the Hudson River with Manhattan on the left and New Jersey out on the right, looking out toward the Atlantic Ocean. This is the view over Times Square with the Beaver Pond there, looking out toward the east.
More of that later. First, Mexico's violence on video. As newspapers try to reinvent themselves and become internet destinations, they've been embracing web video. Click next to that column of words and you are experiencing newspapers, the web, and television merging into one medium. Even true with the Gray Lady, the New York Times. In fact, earlier this year, the Times hired a couple of top documentary makers to travel to Mexico and bring back the story of the deadly Juarez drug wars right across from El Paso on video. We will see some examples in a minute. They are the Renault brothers who join us now, Craig Renault, and next to him, Brent Renault. They have been honored for their HBO documentary, Little Rock Central, 50 years later, and for their feature-length film, Dope Sick Love. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much for your work and for coming into our studio to discuss it.
Sure.
And before we even talk, this first clip is a kind of introduction to the drug wars in Juarez. Again, this is a metropolis right across from El Paso in Texas. People can walk across the border. It used to be a vibrant city, people going back and forth. Not so much right now. This they produced after their first visit to Juarez early this year. It's pretty graphic and scary, so we warn you here, tune away if it might be inappropriate for someone watching.
This is Juarez, Mexico, ground zero for drug trafficking into the United States, and the center of a major drug war between the Juarez cartel and the Gulf cartel. Brazen executions with automatic weapons are a daily occurrence here. Since the beginning of 2008, more than 2,000 people have been killed, making this border city across the Rio Grande River from El Paso, Texas, one of the deadliest in the world. Miguel Macias is a security specialist in Juarez. He showed us some of the guns found at crime scenes around the city.
It's the guns preferred from the hitmen and the cartel people.
¿Esta que es igual?
95% come from the United States and illegal.
The weapons that are arming the drug war in Juarez are illegal to purchase and possess in Mexico. But anyone with a driver's license and a clean record can acquire them across the border in the United States. Since Congress lifted the ban on assault weapons in 2004, increasingly the weapons used in Mexico's drug wars are military-style weapons like AK-47s or American-made Colt AR-15s. Most of the weapons are bought at U.S. gun shows or big box retailers and smuggled into Juarez. In an effort to stem the violence, the Mexican government has turned over security of the city to more than 7,000 military troops and 3,000 federal police officers. They set up checkpoints and patrols around the city looking for drugs and guns, and raid the favorite hangouts of cartel members.
Wow, so we smuggle the drugs from Mexico and then smuggle the guns to the drug dealers across the border, is that it?
That's right, that's exactly how it works.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then we fight the drug war against the smugglers with the weapons that are brought in from the United States.
Right. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it seems almost like a losing battle, really, and that's really why we went there in the first place. About 6 months ago, the Mexican government decided to send 10,000 federal troops, their army, into Juarez to patrol the streets to try to stop the violence that was going on there. I mean, as we talk about there, brazen gun battles in the middle of the afternoon. And most of the people being killed are drug dealers. But inevitably, you know, other people get killed. It becomes Americans are scared to go there. The dollars are not being spent there. No one's going to the restaurants and bars anymore. And ultimately, it's the citizens of Juarez that suffer.
What's being smuggled in from there? What's the drug?
The drugs coming into the United States are mostly marijuana, is where the real money is. And the Mexican cartels control most of the marijuana distribution in the United States.
And why is it so hot there? I mean, there's certainly an easy flow of marijuana into this country, I presume over many checkpoints from Mexico. Why did it get so hot in Juarez?
Well, you basically have another cartel trying to come in on the existing cartel's territory, and that's when things had gotten so out of control. And so a lot of the murders and the hits that you see are these cartels battling for control of the city. And one thing that we saw when we just went back on our second trip is how brutal they're getting in their killings to try to scare off and put fear into the other cartels. I mean, we're talking about hands chopped off, heads chopped off. You know, we came upon one murder where somebody had been kidnapped in broad daylight in El Paso, brought back over the border, his hands were cut off and his throat slit. And a lot of times the cartels will call the media in Juarez first to let them know, so they show up with their cameras before the police even get there, because they want the message out to the other cartels of how brutal they are.
No question who's in control. Right. We'll play another clip in a minute. That clip was from April, do I have that right? And that was timed to coincide with President Obama's first visit as president to Mexico?
That's correct.
And what were you trying to say? I mean, something that had to do with him going there? Was it a plea to him in any way to do something?
Well, I think the timing, that's good for it to be topical. But really, it was about the deployment of the troops into the city, and we wanted to see what would the effect be on the violence. And the violence actually did go down dramatically from about 10 to 15 murders a day down to 2, sometimes 1 a day for a little while. Then 6 months later...
Let's just stop on that for a second and digest it. 10 to 15 murders a day.
Execution-style murders in the streets.
All gang against gang, or drug cartel versus drug cartel.
Absolutely. Juarez is the most dangerous city in the world if you count the murders, over 300 in August. And but also 99% of them are drug dealers killing drug dealers. It's a war between the cartels.
Worse than Baghdad.
Absolutely.
Or Baghdad at the height of the war, probably.
Yeah.
Is one solution to this just that one of the cartels is going to win and they're going to have control of that turf, and that's the end of that?
I mean, I think that would certainly reduce the violence. I don't know that it would end, but, the majority of the killings right now is this battle that's going on between them.
But you have to think about it. If there's 300 murders in 1 month of drug dealers, you got to realize there's an unlimited supply of foot soldiers for these guys. Poor men and women all over Mexico, and the supply is endless.
And the supply of guns going the other way, is this an issue in Washington? I hear people decrying Mexico. Mexico is unstable. The most extreme versions say that drug dealers are going to take over the country and overthrow the government, et cetera, et cetera. But if they're using weapons smuggled from the United States because the assault weapons ban was allowed by Congress to expire a few years ago, is anybody raising that battle cry, rallying cry in D.C.?
Well, the gun issue is a tough one, and I think it's one that the Obama administration probably doesn't want to touch right now. And, people say, yes, they are coming through the United States, but if we cut it off, then they would come through somewhere else. So it's really a tough question.
Now, this clip, also from their work on the New York Times website, videographers reporting for the New York Times, as all media kind of connect. Nobody's in just print journalism anymore, or video or digital. This is from their trip back to Juarez later this year to see how the Army was doing policing the city. Turns out things went backwards, and they illustrate that, revisiting the story of one nun who has made a difference.
Every day for 14 years, I have been coming across the border, try to make the world a little better.
6 months ago, we met Sister Donna Kustich. Every day, she would travel from the safety of her home in El Paso, Texas, across the border into the poorest neighborhoods of Juarez, where she employs nearly 50 women to work with local youth. When we went to check in with Sister Donna on this latest trip, for the first time in 14 years, she could not be found working in the Women's Center.
Ustedes saben que robaron a Dana, su carro. 2 hombres la bajaron y traían armas. Pero sí da miedo. Dana habló con su congregación y la congregación ahorita no está dispuesta a que Dana venga.
Yeah, these are just beautiful pictures. That's neat. There's the chapel and the cross. Isn't that cute? That was Christmas.
We found Sister Donna at home in El Paso with her colleague Sister Maureen, discussing the Women's Center that she built in Juarez, but can no longer visit.
This young woman here started with us when she was a child. She is now a certified teacher of kindergarten, and that's because we have helped her get that far. We can't abandon them. No. We can't walk away from them, no matter what.
It is too early to know for sure, but without Sister Donna and the American assistance she brings with her, the center will struggle to stay open.
So sad.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is the collateral damage of the cartel war there. If we're not going to really talk about ways to deal with it fundamentally, like legalizing drugs or bans on the guns, a lot of people do say, well, just let them kill each other. Eventually, they'll run out of people, and mostly drug dealers killing drug dealers, and that's the way it'll be. But what happens is you have situations like this, where now this nun can no longer visit the community center. The American money that she brings dries up. The volunteers dries up. There's no food for the kids in the center, and it affects everybody in that neighborhood.
I gather there's a new mayor of Juarez who's trying to do something different?
Yeah, well, he actually this is his last year because they don't re-elect their mayors, and
so he's not so new.
He's not so new, but his father was actually mayor a long time ago in Juarez. He's Harvard educated, speaks perfect English, you know, and he was one of the ones who really wanted the federal troops to come in to try to deal with this. He fired over half the police force, which you can imagine was a very dangerous thing to do. Before he did that, they had 2 police chiefs killed in a 48-hour span. They assassinated the first one, replaced him, and then he was killed. You know, shortly after.
Because a lot of the officers were corrupt.
A lot of the officers were corrupt.
We just have a couple of minutes left. Talk about your work a little bit. People saw the New York Times logo in the corner of the videos. They think of the New York Times, still a lot of people do, as this thing you know, get the fingers dirty from the print coming off on. Are you the new kind of journalism at the New York Times?
Well, I hope we're part of it. You know, the New York Times has a big commitment to web video. It's the department that's growing most at the paper and online right now. We'll be going to Haiti to do a similar series next week as we did to this one. So, and they try to cross-promote it with the print and the video from the website and the paper.
You were telling me you've had many, many views because this was on the front page of the paper, right?
Right, exactly.
And it tells people to see some of this on video, which must be very alluring to people who are interested in the topic. They go to the website and click on the video and they can see your work.
And vice versa, yeah. The video also links back to draws people to the paper.
How about for you as full-length documentary makers working in this short form? Because a video that goes on a newspaper site can't be but a few minutes long, right?
Right.
So is it constraining and constricting? Is it liberating in a way? What's it like?
I would say for us it's very liberating because it usually takes us a year to shoot a full-length film and to edit it and then to eventually get a broadcast and get it out. You know, whereas this, we shoot it in a week. We have it up on the site within a few days after that, and then, you know, millions of people are able to see it. So it's actually very rewarding for us.
15 seconds. What are you looking for in Haiti?
We're going to be doing a story about a former colonel from the U.S. Army who maintained his Haitian citizenship, and now he's going to go back and try to run for president of that country. And then also a story about the environment. Haiti's 97% deforested, and some people think there's almost no way back, and we're going to go look into that.
You're not afraid of the tough stuff, are you?
No.
Good luck. We'll be looking for your stuff in the Times and online. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Here are this week's online video picks. Number 1. For the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, let's remember its early days, 1962, digging a tunnel to freedom. This comes from the website of the Guardian newspaper from the UK. It's part of a series of theirs called Berlin Wall, 20 Years On.
Bernauer Straße is also the site of some of the most famous escapes. Joachim Rudolph was just 22 years old when he took part in one of the more dramatic plans that involved tunnelling beneath a residential street.
In April 1962, we started building the tunnel over there on Bernauer Street. And finally, when the tunnel was finished, we came out here at number 7 on Schönholzer Street. This here was the end of our tunnel, so the escapees got in through the cellar.
Here in Berlin we have a very, very sandy soil, and this is a very dangerous ground to dig a tunnel because it constantly collapses.
We started building the tunnel in April 1962, and the breakthrough was on the 14th of September in the same year. So the tunnel took half a year to build.
I crawled through this tunnel from East Berlin to West Berlin with my first husband when I was called Evelina Schmidt, and with my 14-month-old daughter and my first mother-in-law.
In the tunnel, the clay was scraped away. Then a second person tipped it into a cart, and the cart was pulled out using a pulley. We lived for 12 hours in the tunnel, then slept for 12 hours, and then back into the tunnel, and so on for 5 or 6 days a week.
We didn't tell anybody because we were terrified that somebody would give it away, or that my grandmother might say, "You can't go with the child." So we had to keep it to ourselves, and that was, of course, a heavy burden.
And it's amazing to remember that in the end, the Soviet Empire fell without a shot being fired. Some Palestinians used the Berlin Wall anniversary to make a video point of their own. In the town of Naline on the West Bank, they physically and symbolically took down a piece of wall that separates them from Israelis. This is video pic 2. Some walls are meant to keep people in, like the Berlin Wall. Some are meant to keep people out, as Israelis understandably hope the West Bank wall keeps terrorists out. But for ordinary Palestinians, the wall keeps them in. So the double tragedy of the Israeli-Palestinian cycle keeps going round. That video posted on YouTube by Active Stills. Video pic number 3 from the artist and community building group at babblegum.com. It's Honey, I Shrunk Red Hook.
Honey, I Shrunk the Red Hook is an installation in the Lucky Gallery that represents the neighborhood all around the Lucky Gallery, sort of in a little microcosmic dollhouse form. We're hoping that all these different populations that don't interact very much will come down and play with the little dolls of themselves within the little dollhouse version of Red Hook.
That corner, that particular corner, kind of like, it is kind of like a crossway of the actual whole neighborhood. Like, you can see people from like all the segments of the community go through that part.
The idea of community plays a pretty big role in this. One of the ideas that we were talking about is the notion of familiar strangers, which is not complete strangers, but the people that you see in your neighborhood, you nod to them or you say hi, and you don't really know them or interact with them. Lewis and I work in the same building, and we did not know each other, and Laura asked us to work together on this.
I knew Black and I knew Andy separately, and I was like, you know, I really want to connect you two. And it was kind of my little social experiment to see like what they would come up collectively, because I know they're both, you know, at MIT, they're both in the media lab.
So that was the first level, that now actually we're friends and we're working together on this project. And now the rest of the project is to get a lot of these other people whose photos we've taken in the neighborhood, in the act of playing in this virtual Red Hook, now interact with each other like they don't in the real Red Hook.
Video pic number 4. Ever wonder just how much Google actually knows about the details of your life? Well, at least they let you see some of it. Here's a video by the masters of the search universe themselves about looking up the record of your own Google use.
Once you are in your Google Accounts page, you will notice a link that says Dashboard, view data stored with this account. When you click on the Dashboard link, you will go to a second sign-in page. We will ask you to verify your password again to ensure extra protection before we provide a summary of the data associated with your Google account. Once verified, you'll see your dashboard is organized according to the different products you use. The dashboard shows data associated with your Google account, which means only information you share with us as a logged-in user is included. All the data in your dashboard is considered private and only viewable by you unless noted by the shared icon. We know how important it is to give you control over your data in one place, and that is why we created the Google Dashboard. Dashboard gives you more transparency and control. You have options to delete your data, change your settings, and more easily control your overall user experience. So what are you waiting for? Try using Google Dashboard today.
And if you Google Yankees, you might get Yankee collectible ads on your Google pages for the next 27 championships. But maybe not for this New Yorker. Our video pick number 5 from Jay Smooth at Ill Doctrine is about seeing last week's World Series win as simply very New York.
So I don't know, it was cool. I was happy along with everybody else. But as I compared this to that other night, it started making me wonder, is this what McCain fans would have been like if they had won that thing? Oh my God, the white guy wins 44-0. Yes, we can. I mean, yes, we always do. What were you even thinking? Woo! That would have sucked. So what I'm asking today of my fellow New Yorkers is that we try to be magnanimous and not lord it over everybody else too much. I mean, we are the best, just generally speaking. We lead more gratifying lives, but that was already well established, so we should be gracious. We shouldn't keep rubbing it in. Just like how Mayor Bloomberg has so much money he can spend $100 million on this last election, and yet he still goes and rides the subway once in a while so he can pretend he's one of us. That is what real New Yorkers do. We pretend to be humble. So let's just try and keep that thought close to our hearts as we celebrate this latest of our many, many, many victories, and tip our caps to the Yankees and to Mayor Bloomberg for showing that if you want it badly enough, you can do anything. Or at least you can buy anything, which is close enough. Good work, guys.
As a Yankee fan, I've never been as proud to lord it over some other city that isn't as rich, like Philadelphia. And those are this week's online video picks. It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. When a new technology is developed, the inventors can never fully imagine how it will change the world. It's because the consumers become innovators too. Take the mobile phone. Who could have dreamed that it would be used to document human rights violations in Burma or monitor elections in Ghana, Lebanon, and Sierra Leone? Or that people right here in New York could actually be volunteering time for a good cause as they wait for a bus. Joining us, 2 innovators who use the mobile phone as a lever to lift the world. Katrin Verclas is co-founder of mobileactive.org, and via Skype from San Francisco, Jacob Colker, co-founder of the Extrordinaries. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks,
Katrin, tell us about Active Mobile. What is it? What do you do?
Mobile Active.
Mobile Active?
Mobile Active is a network of people from around the world who are using mobile technology to make the world a better place for social change. So this could be in health, this could be in providing information to poor farmers, this could be in a variety of different settings. You mentioned elections, governance, accountability, lots of areas where mobile phones are being used, and so we're a big community who's exchanges knowledge and expertise and lessons learned.
And we'll see some video examples
Yes.
as we go along. Jacob, welcome. Tell us about your organization with the wonderful name, the Extraordinaries. What do the Extraordinaries do?
Thanks for having us on. So the Extraordinaries is about taking advantage of those spare moments and the transitionary points throughout our daily lives when you're riding on the bus or waiting for a latte at Starbucks, or any of those moments that you have 2 or 3 minutes free and a little bit of time to use your brain power for something else other than the task at hand. And so we've built a platform that allows people to convert that spare time into social good using their brain power to do what are called crowdsourcing tasks, translating one sentence, tagging one image, and the sum of all that adds up to a tremendous amount of energy when you factor in thousands or hundreds of thousands of people doing it.
Want to give me an example?
Well, sure. So tagging images. When you go to Google and you type in cat or dog, the computer doesn't magically know that that's an image of a cat or a dog. The image has a tag associated with it. So museums all across the country have entire photo databases of images that are not archived, they're not cataloged. And by using the own supporters or constituents of a museum to look at that photo, to describe what they see and add tags to it, in a sense, the crowd, the community of the museum, helps to curate and to catalog and archive that entire set of images, moving that whole process forward. So that's one example of how you can use the system right now.
Let's look at a video example of mobileactive.org at work. You want to give us the context here? This is going to have to do with American Sign Language communicating via mobile phone. You want to set
this
this
is a
up?
group of researchers and students, actually, who have developed or are looking at developing a video protocol that can be transmitted over the mobile phone that allows people who are deaf to communicate with one another visually over mobile technology, mobile phones.
Let's take a look.
Mobile ASL is a video compression project with the goal of enabling real-time sign language communication over the standard wireless cell phone network in the United States. Due to the low bandwidth of the standard GPRS cell phone network in the US and the limited processing power of today's cell phones, even today's best video encoders cannot produce the quality video needed for intelligible, real-time sign language conversations. The Mobile ASL project is developing a new real-time video compression scheme to transmit video within the existing wireless network in real time, while maintaining video quality that allows for intelligible sign language. Our video encoders are compatible with the H.264 compression standard using X264, an open source codec. By taking into account empirically validated visual and perceptual processes that occur during conversations in sign language, we can optimize the real-time video encoding for this specific domain.
Okay, Katrin, that's a wonderful example, but how big is this? I mean, you have compared the spread of mobile phones around the developing world to the printing press in Europe 600 years ago. I mean, that is a high historical bar. How far are you going with this?
Well, right now, at this moment in time, and I looked earlier, there's about 4.6 billion mobile subscriptions around the world. So if we have
there
a little
are only
over
6 billion people in the world.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of how widespread mobile technology is. So even if you count double SIM cards, many people have more than one SIM card or phone, we have about 3.7 billion users of mobile technology, and that is all over the world. You know, to the extent that your audience has traveled, no matter where they go, there is mobile coverage in most places of the world now, and the mobile phone is ubiquitous. So suddenly we have this information and communication device that is in the hands of people that, to date, really hasn't ever been the case. So a piece of technology that allows you to access communication or access information, allows you to communicate with one another in a completely unprecedented way. And of course, people in the development community, people who are interested in social improvement, are enormously excited about the potential to deliver services for people at the bottom of the economic period to access information that they need to make their lives better.
Before we go back to Jacob, I remember reading a stat maybe 10 years ago that said 3/4 of the people in the world do not own a telephone, which was meant to give us a little reality check here in the West about technologies that we take for granted and how poor is in much of the rest of the world. That stat must be woefully outdated.
Yes.
Because mobile phones have come along and are what? Just more affordable for people around the world than having to string landlines everywhere?
Yes, absolutely. It's much cheaper to set up a mobile infrastructure. There's many mobile operators in the world now. There's increased competition, which has driven the price down. I have a handset here that's actually a solar-powered handset from Kenya. So I don't even need electricity. I just put it out in the sun. It charges automatically. Also has a nice little flashlight attached to it. So if I don't have electricity at night, I can use it. That costs about $20 US. And I can top it up with however much money I possibly have available. As little as a few cents. And in fact, in many parts of the world, you can call people and ask them to call you back entirely for free. So what does that mean? What does that mean that we have this device, right? This access to information? I mean, that's the sort of big question that we're trying to figure out as we speak. And it's, in many ways, a gigantic experiment.
What does it mean? What can it mean?
Access to information means more efficient markets. So if you're a fisherman in Kerala, which is an often cited example, you bring in
Southern India.
Southern India, correct. You bring in your fish. Prior to the advent of having a cell phone, you had to rely on just hitting the right harbor and getting the highest price possible for your very perishable good, the fish. Now you can literally, fishermen will call ahead and scout where can they achieve or get the highest price. It has resulted in higher incomes for fishermen. It has resulted in lower prices. The sort of price disparity that existed before has been flattened. And so when information is accessible, markets become more efficient, incomes rise. And that's just one example of many where, there's a lot of hope and potential here.
Jacob, back to your concept of micro-volunteering on your mobile phone. Are there some New York examples of which, people can micro-volunteer for?
Well, sure. We're working with some folks out there. One example of a Flickr photo tagging task that we're working with is the Brooklyn Museum. They've had some tasks tagged in our system. And there are a few others, national organizations that we're working with that certainly have quite a few supporters in New York. Big Cat Rescue, Kaboom, which is an organization that works to help identify play spaces throughout the United States. And our users are photographing play spaces with their cell phones and uploading that to a database, which helps parents find safe play spaces for their kids to play. So there are many examples of why we're working not only in New York, but across the country.
Those are great examples. Is there a clearinghouse for these things? Is there a website that people can go to on their regular computers or on their phones to find out about micro-volunteering opportunities?
Absolutely. You can visit our website, which is www.beextra.org, B-E-E-X-T-R-A, which is short for Be Extraordinary. And you can use our system both on an iPhone and a regular computer. We have a web component. We're launching a Facebook app soon as well. So you don't need a mobile phone to be extraordinary. You can do that from any computer.
Now, let's take a look at a second video from mobileactive.org using a very different kind of venue. This is to gather health data in Brazil. Let's take a look, and then Katrin will tell us more.
What we're trying to do is enable field workers for organizations like the Health Ministry in this case, or non-profits, to be able to collect field data on mobile phones, rather than have to carry around reams of paper with them when they're doing their work. Now, it's not immediately obvious why that matters until you understand how it's being done now and what the consequences of that are.
Antes, era o agente preenchendo aquele formulário, né, na visita casa a casa. No final da semana, o supervisor de área pega essas informações, né, esses boletins, leva para o supervisor geral, o supervisor geral corrige, leva para o laboratório, do laboratório é que levava para o digitador e o digitador é que digitava as informações para passar para a coordenação. Hoje não, hoje com esse aparelhinho, com o celular, na mesma hora, você tem as informações. A gente está no campo trabalhando e ele está fazendo o trabalho e está enviando as informações para a gente lá na coordenação.
Antes demorava quanto tempo? E agora? Antes
demorava para ter as informações 1 mês a 2 meses para ter essas informações da área toda trabalhada.
E agora?
E agora não, você tem diariamente.
So if you have to wait 2 or 3 months before you have the information and before you can act, at least in the health context, that can be the matter of life and death, and that's why this is important.
So from fish in Kerala to personal health information in Brazil, the concept is really the same, isn't it?
Absolutely. Health, actually, mHealth in particular, and mobile health, it's a huge area where there's a lot of experimentation in data collection, disease surveillance, sort of instant reporting, information about child nutrition status that then would trigger food supplies being delivered to particular regions where children becoming dangerously malnourished can now be transmitted in almost real time via SMS primarily. This is a video that Nokia did. And Nokia has a particular application for data collection, health data collection. There are actually a number of other free and open source kind of tools. So for organizations that are collecting data on patients, on health status, on diseases, have a sort of plethora of options.
Is there a potential problem or conflict of interest here with a manufacturer like Nokia trying to market their phones by hooking them to a social good to start out anyway, you know, not knowing whether that will remain funded or whether they'll pull out from these kinds of useful functions?
Well, I think let's untangle that a little bit. So because the mobile network is privately owned and operated in most parts of the world, there are few still public operators, mobile operators. But we're essentially dealing, unlike the internet, we're dealing with a very closed system. We're dealing with a commercial entity that organizations, social development organizations around the world have to work with. So we're really talking about kind of an ecosystem, and in many parts of the world now, in Kenya and Ghana and other places, health ministries becoming interested to actually, get information from rural clinics via mobile phone, patient information, etc. So you're dealing with this sort of ecosystem of social development and health organizations, international NGOs, health ministries and government entities, and the private operators and private companies. And, you know, it's a dance that we are having to somehow figure out, and it's, you know, it's not always easy, let's put it that way.
So you've got the mobile phones going in every remote corner of the world, and Jacob,
people in our network, yes.
Yes, exactly.
Not me, believe me.
And Jacob, you are telling people volunteering is now as easy as standing at 23rd and 6th waiting for the M23 to come. Where do you see your project or micro-volunteering using mobile phones going ultimately if your dreams come true?
Well, sure. I mean, Katrin had a great example a few seconds ago when she was talking about, you know, fishermen being able to receive information. And I think for us, it's this notion of what we can contribute. We have 90% of the world has cell phone coverage right now. And as these devices become more powerful, the internet as we know it is changing. It's no longer confined by a physical wire plugged into a desktop computer. It now can be in your pocket 24 hours a day. And so it's this notion of what we can accomplish when we share our skills, our talents, our passions with those projects that can put that to good use. And with the field of crowdsourcing now becoming much more widely accepted with examples like Wikipedia, Innocentive, iStockPhoto, many companies have proven this in the marketplace. And now that that proof exists, combined with mobile devices all over the world that can access very fast, powerful internet, and combine that with a few million people in spare time, and you have an equation for something really magical.
How about that?
And that is what we hope to achieve.
Mobile technology, not just for games and chatting with your friends, a great vision of the future and the present from both of you. Thank you very much. Coming up next, the greening of New York. No, not parks and bike lanes. We will actually see computers turn the city green like it was 400 years ago when Henry Hudson came. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
These kids almost had a new community center. A contractor almost volunteered to build it. A carpenter almost worked on the crew. And everyone else almost gave at the fundraiser. They almost gave. Almost. And these kids? Well, they almost stayed out of trouble.
Say, are you worried about H1N1? You know, swine flu. Well, CUNY says protect yourself from hidden horrors. Here's how. After touching public surfaces, don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Flu is also spread when infected people cough at you. Sneeze into a tissue, never your bare hands. Or use your elbow. Wash often with soap and water. Or use an alcohol-based hand cleanser. There are two kinds of flu shots this season. Consult your doctor or healthcare provider on the regular and H1N1 vaccinations. Most importantly, if you feel sick and have fever, stay home. Yes, a little caution goes a long way.
For more information, visit our website, cuny.edu, and click on H1N1 Update.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Using the latest computer technology, our next guest went back to the year 1609 to recreate Manhattan's historic ecological landscape. That is, he stripped away the built world to reveal the Eden it used to be when Henry Hudson sailed in exactly 400 years ago this year. No, this isn't the computer graphic set for a new Spielberg film, although maybe it should be. It's actually the Wildlife Conservation Society's latest mapping project, and it's been sweeping the web thanks to its founder and director, Eric Sanderson. Welcome, Eric.
Hi, Brian. Thanks very much for having me.
And let's go right to our first example. We are going to see, let's see, just how involved is creating an ecological system from scratch. We'll take a look at this clip from Eric's presentation in the TED Talks Innovation Series that has been captivating the web.
So we would read in field guides, standard field guide that maybe you have on your shelves, you know, what beavers need as a slowly meandering stream with aspen trees and alders and willows near the water. That's the best thing for a beaver. So we just started making a list. Here's the beaver, and here's the stream, and the aspen, and the alder, and the willow, as if these were the maps that we would need to predict where you would find the beaver, or the bog turtle needing wet meadows and insects in sunny places, or the bobcat needing rabbits and beavers and den sites. And rapidly, we started to realize that beavers can be something that a bobcat needs, but a beaver also needs things, and that having it on either side means we can link it together, that we can create the network of the habitat relationships for these species. Moreover, we realized that you can start out as being a beaver specialist, but you can look up what an aspen needs. An aspen needs fire and dry soils. That you can look at what a wet meadow needs, and it needs beavers to create the wetlands, and maybe some other things. But you can also talk about sunny places. So what does a sunny place need? Not habitat per se, but what are the conditions that make it possible? Or fire, or dry soils. And that you can put these on a grid that's 1,000 columns long across the top and 1,000 rows down the other way. And that we can visualize this data like a network, like a social network. And this is the network of all the habitat relationships, of all the plants and animals on Manhattan, and everything they needed, going back to the geology, going back to time and space at the very core of the web. We call this the mirror web. And if you zoom in on it, it looks like this. Each point is a different species, or a different stream, or a different soil type. And those little gray lines are the connections that connect them together. They're the connections that actually make nature resilient. And the structure of this is what makes nature work, seen with all its parts.
That is amazing. And so it's actual visualization of what it might have looked like, and then there's kind of a meta visualization, like we saw at the end, of what the relationships are like when set visually.
That's right, that's right. You know, people don't understand how much nature's changed, say over the last 400 years, or even over the last 100 years, because we don't really have an experience of full nature anymore. Nature with all its parts, like I was talking about in the video. So that's what we're trying to get across with this, you know, very detailed case study of a particular place. This particular place happening to be Manhattan Island.
400 years ago.
400 years ago. What it was on the eve of Henry Hudson sailing into the harbor on September 12, 1609. You know, well, I was going to say, all the history books, you know, they start with Henry Hudson, and what we're trying to get at is what was there right before the history books start.
So, another clip. What happens when the latest movie-making tools fall into the hands of a passionate ecologist? Something quite beautiful.
We use the tools they use in Hollywood to make these fantastic landscapes that we all see in the movies. And we tried to use it to visualize Third Avenue. So we would take the landscape and we would build up the topography. We would lay on top of that the soils and the waters and illuminate the landscape. We would lay on top of that the map of the ecological communities and feed into that the map of the species, so that we can actually take a photograph flying above Times Square looking toward the Hudson River, waiting for Hudson to come. Using this technology, we can make these fantastic georeference views. We can basically take a picture out of any window on Manhattan and see what that landscape looked like 400 years ago. This is the view from the East River looking up Murray Hill at where the United Nations is today. This is the view looking down the Hudson River with Manhattan on the left and New Jersey out on the right, looking out toward the Atlantic Ocean. This is the view over Times Square with the Beaver Pond there, looking out toward the east. So we can see the Collect Pond and the Lisbonard marshes back behind. We can see the fields that the Native Americans made. And we can see this in the geography of the city today.
So it's gorgeous and it's unbelievably intricate. Why do it? Is it nostalgia? Is it a certain kind of environmentalism? What?
Well, you know, I work for a conservation organization, and I can tell you a lot of, you know, really terrible stories that would make you cry about what's happening to the environment. And so through this project, I wanted to tell a story about why I love nature so much. That's because it's beautiful, and because it's interesting, because it's intricate, because it's critical to our lives, and actually try and build that idea into the idea of New York. You know, New York City, which, you know, includes many, many ideas, but the idea of nature hasn't always been one of those parts.
And did you pick 1609 just because of the historical hook of the anniversary?
Yeah, well, because you know, here in North America we have a very distinct moment in time, which is when the Europeans get here, and the ecology changes, the Native Americans change, so many things change on that date. So you know, just like with Charles Mann spoke about 1491 a few years ago, it's sort of the natural point that everyone thinks about.
So the Manhattan, as it was called, of that time seems light years removed from the Manhattan of today. Do you connect them in a certain sense? I mean, we can't roll back the clock to 1608.
Sure. No, that's right. I mean, they're connected because they are the same place, just separated by 400 years, not forever. But on the other hand, you know, a lot of the project is about thinking about the future. So, you know, how does understanding where we come from help inform where we are today and what the city will be? You know, Henry Hudson never would have imagined the city as we have it today. What would be the city 400 years from now?
And so let's take a look at the slide, the first of several that you're going to walk us through here. This is kind of splitting the difference between 1609 and 2009, isn't it?
Yeah, my son calls this the half park. We have Central Park. This would be the half park. So the idea here is that, you know, what made Manhattan so wonderful? It was its diversity of species, its a density of interactions that you see in the mirror web, its ability to sustain itself. You know, if Henry Hudson hadn't sailed into the harbor on September 12th, Manhattan would have continued kind of as it was, not in a constant form, not a static form, but in a way that would have maintained habitat for all the things that live there. So, but one of the things I learned through the Manhattan Project is that those are actually the things I love about New York too, right? But in different terms. So the cultural diversity of the city is so fantastic. And the density of the city is what enables, you know, me to come and meet you and all these fantastic people here. But of course, the thing that I think we're all worrying about is what's the sustainability of New York City? Can it be that amazing place that provides, you know, this gratifying experience, like on one of your earlier videos, to us for 400 years in its current form? You know, I don't think that's the case.
Next slide. What are we looking at here?
So this is Manhattan, you know, as Henry Hudson would have seen it, or as an eagle might have seen it anyway. That's his ship over there on the left. So we're looking at the battery.
And what are those smoke plumes, if they are smoke plumes, kind of in the middle?
Yeah, so the illustrator, Mark Boyer, on the project, we used smoke to try and illustrate where the Lenape were, the Native Americans. It's really important when we look at images like this that we don't think that it was a landscape without people. There were people here. There were Native Americans who've been here for maybe 8,000 years before Henry Hudson arrived. There were just many fewer of them.
Let's continue. Manhattan today, we're in the Flatiron District, it looks like.
Madison Square Park,
Just making the contrast, or is this about the greening of certain areas? There we go. That's Madison Square Park still, but it looks greener.
Yeah, so this idea that we used in the mirror web, that you can define habitat in terms of food, water, shelter, reproductive resources. In the last chapter of my book, we take that idea to cities. So how do cities provide food? How do they provide water? How do they provide shelter? And because those are fundamental needs that cities have, they've always had to find solutions to them. So you can look back in the past and figure out, well, where did the stormwater go, you know, 400 years ago? In streams. How did people get around 100 years ago when there were 2.2 million people living on Manhattan? Streetcars. So forth and so on. And so we try and structure some ideas of what the city of the future might look like by thinking about all the kinds of choices we can make about these fundamental habitat needs in cities.
Are other cities getting in touch with you since these TED Talk videos have gone so viral online and saying, ooh, do for us what you did for New York?
Yeah, I mean, London. I was just in Chicago having some conversations last week. You know, Boston a little bit, San Francisco. But
figuring out their own historical touch dates?
Yeah, no, that's right. It's harder for a place like Europe. And it's actually harder for me, too, because they're not my hometown the way New York is.
There are plaques around the city that commemorate some of these lost ecological treasures, correct?
Well, we were hoping for that. We didn't get that.
Oh, you didn't get that?
No. We had a museum exhibition in the museum in the city of New York. We built a website, allows people to zoom into their block and see what was there. But the actual physical evidence, which hopefully will one day be manifested in streams and parks and things, that's yet to come.
Right. I did it. Zoomed into my block to see what it looked like 400 years ago. Are you calling for any kind of legislation or other policy change with respect to what your work points up?
Well, I don't think so at this point. I think this project right now is about what does it mean to be a New Yorker in 2009, and what are the decisions we're making going into the future. Not specific policy things, but just how do we think of ourselves and how do we think of the city and nature.
We're out of time, but I'm sure a lot of our viewers will want to see more of this for themselves. What's the web address?
Yeah, so it's themannahattaproject.org.
themannahattaproject.org.
That's right, or you can just Google Mannahatta with 2 N's and 2 T's and they'll take you right there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
And finally tonight, have you ever heard the expression, real musicians have day jobs? Well, whatever your passion, you still got to bring home the bacon, right? This from The Lehrer Show.
And everything got soy in it. Ain't nothing under my pillow. Soy this, soy that. Stupid town, stupid. Soy burger? He says, leave me alone. Make like a tree and leave me alone. Brilliant. Idiot. Whoa, what'd that bird eat? Man, I gotta get to work. Man, I'm late. Nobody needs to go to a wiffle ball tournament. Wiffle ball tournaments with losers. I gotta be paid Thursday for work on Monday. They know that. Mikey, how's it going? You ready for this? We gonna lay this down? What do we got here today? Oh, water, thank you. This is it? This is all we got? All right, let's lay it down. I want to get out of here. You ready? Here we go.
Support for NPR comes from the John D. and Katrin T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to creating a more just, verdant, and peaceful world, and Stonyfield Farm, organic yogurt, and more. Visit us on the web at www.npr.org. This is NPR, National Public Radio.
You got it? All right. Print it. I'm out. Another day, another dollar.
Hits a little close to home. Of course, you have no idea what I'm really like off the air. But that's it for tonight's show. We are here Wednesday nights at 7:30 or as a podcast at CUNY.TV. Next week, focused philanthropy for city schools. And join me for my daily radio show, weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC. Tomorrow morning, a website that translates between Arabic and English for intercultural dialogue. That's on AM 820 and FM 93.9 WNYC tomorrow morning at 10. Have a great night.